crushed violently, in many cases, by the Ahmadinejad faction of the regime, by the Iranian state. And so how would that fit in to your analysis? I think that raises certain problematic questions for that line of thinking.
Thank you, Jenny. Shelley.
I'd like to follow up by saying these surveys that have been done over the last 6 months in Iran, with all the problems that they have, don't suggest, there's not much difference in rural and urban responses in terms of the distribution of support for various candidates. Keep in mind that the revolution of 1978 and 79 was also a largely, almost exclusively urban phenomenon, that the rural population at that time did not get involved very much in the protests against the Shah, and that Iranian society has shifted since that time dramatically from 30% urban to over 60% urban, and is continuing a flood of migration towards the big cities. The society itself is undergoing a massive change, a change that includes the unintended effects of mass education, which the Islamic Republic has invested in heavily. There's a huge increase in the number of children going to school, rise in literacy, and in the number of children staying in school up through high school and including college. So the group, the students, is itself now a much more socially diverse category than it was 30 years ago. There have been also symbolic moments equivalent in some ways to the flowers in the rifles, which was sort of like bra burning or the other things, really far more of a media amplified event than a widespread phenomenon itself in 78 and 79. It took place in front of the cameras. It was for the cameras. Yes, it occurred. But let's not exaggerate and pretend that this event was somehow cataclysmic at the moment, an earth-shattering ethical engagement. There have been similar reaching out to the security forces over the last half a year. One of the events there, a type of event that has occurred a number of times, and there's numerous videos of this and still photographs, is when a crowd has managed to surround a small number of security forces and is going to beat the dickens out of them, clearly. And a group of protesters who are among the sort of more organized portion of the protest event link arms in front of or even around the group of helmeted riot police to protect them from the crowd and to say our beef is not with them, our beef is against the regime and its strategies. It's not. These have also been taken as moments of ethical transcendence of the binary and an appeal to the humanity of the security forces on an individual level. And so I think there are equivalences there. One other point I wanted to make in all this discussion of Eastern Europe, which I find fascinating and which is going on in the Green Movement itself, and not just in the Green Movement, but also in the regime's intellectual circles, where they are paranoid about a repetition of either a solidarity type movement or a color revolution of the type we've seen in the last few years in the post-Soviet, post-communist sphere. Both of these discussions of Eastern Europe are kind of beside the point. At bottom, this is about Iranians, not about what did or did not happen in Eastern Europe. The use they make of these analogies can potentially be important, but let's move the center of focus back to where it belongs, which is what the Iranian debates are all about and where they may be headed. People say, well, they're not taking economic issues seriously enough. That may be true. People say they might be neoliberal if they were to come to power. That could be true. Right now, they don't have to say much about what they're going to do when they come to power in the Green Movement because it seems so remote, and it would be suicidal for any opposition movement to be totally upfront about what they're planning to do. They could only lose support at this point by being more specific about how they're going to address the very real problems that any Iranian government would face if they were to be in power or if the current regime were to stay in power.
Could I just add one quick thing to that? I actually agree with that. That does not necessarily contradict my point. I'm not suggesting that the Greens engage in a terribly explicit or well-publicized intellectual effort to map out what their economic vision is. It could very well take place quietly in ways that are internal discussions that might even not be organized or programmatic, but that simply involve a kind of intellectual work and thinking and prefiguration, because, as Joanne, I think, said it well, they could find themselves all of a sudden in a position where they have to decide on these things, and if they haven't even given thought to it, troubles begin.
The last word to Ali.
Okay. At least for the central leader, icon of this movement, Mousavi, he's definitely not a new liberal. And the only times that he intervened critically during Khatami's era was against things he considered neoliberal, and but I think a more general point is this, that this is a very diverse movement. It cuts across many layers and tastes, political ideologies in Iranian society. And I can't say. I mean, I was more or less involved and aware of the reform era politics and activism. There were many people on the two opposite sides of the political ideological spectrum, economic ideology spectrum. And the point is, probably a more precise way of seeing this is, the question is how we can integrate the demands of these sub-movements or groups like workers, teachers, the large groups in Iranian society, students, and so on. How can we integrate the demands of these movements or groups into the mainstream of the general minimum agreeable demands of the Green Movement? Mousavi's two recent statements has mentioned this explicitly, that let's talk about economics, let's make economic demands known, let's bring in the productive strata of society into this discourse. He mentions workers, teachers, and so on, productive strata. Okay, so I would say this is a very diverse movement. If there's one slogan that we can agree on, all of us, is that this diversity should be recognized. It is a movement of civil and political rights and liberties, including the rights and liberties of the supporters of Ahmadinejad and this government, the current government. So I would see it as a long-term transition with a lot of ups and downs, defeats and victories. And I don't expect any overnight defeat or victory. I think it is a long time, up and down. And we have to just live it. Some people are fans of Metallica and Michael Jackson. Our lifestyle is this, living this.
It's the perfect place to finish. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you, Sam.
So, go and warm yourselves up or cool yourselves down or whatever. We're going to be back in here at 1:30, right? Yes. 1:30 back in here for the next session. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.